I'm Phyllis Brown, and I'm glad you could join me today. I'm with the Smocking Arts Guild of America, and I'm going to show you how to hem stitch. Hem stitching is part of drawn thread work, which is one of the oldest and most ancient forms of embroidery that we have. We're going to cover basic hem stitching today, and I will show you one little trick when hem stitching along the fold. So to get started, I just want to cover the tools that I use. You're going to need a piece of fabric. Here I have, even weave fabric is the best kind to use. It's difficult to find sometimes. This is a piece of Belfast linen. It's a 32 count. When I'm making garments, I usually use 1,000 count linen or a 1,200 count linen. Okay. You will also need I use a machine needle, a sewing machine needle. I will show you about that in a minute. And you have tapestry needles. I use a tapestry needle to do my stitching because it has a blunt point and then I don't catch the fibers of the fabric. I also need some sort of thread because I'm using coarser fabric today. I'm using pearl cotton number 12. Normally if I'm using my other linens that we spoke about, I would use regular embroidery floss. Of course, you need a pair of scissors. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to pull a few threads out of this fabric. I use a sewing machine needle because it's an easy way to dig the threads out of your fabric without disturbing the other threads around it. So you start by coming close, somewhere close to the fabric edge, and I'm actually going to dig down in here with the tip of my needle and just pull that thread out. If I'm going to be removing more than one fabric thread, say I'm going to remove 4 fabric threads, I'm actually going to come and pull out the other 4 right here while I'm right here, because so often the phone rings or we lose track of our count and then you can't remember what you did. So okay, so I've gone ahead and pulled those from the edge, and now I'm actually going to grab one of these threads and work it down my fabric. And I've left the selvage on here so you could tell which direction my fabric was cut, which was my selvage edge and then which was my cross grain. Okay. And drawn thread work too is you're removing threads from your fabric when you do drawn thread work, which hem stitching is the simplest and most universal stitch in your drawn thread work. So let's get started. I've threaded my needle and I have a knot in the end of my thread. I'm going to start a distance away and just using a waist knot right now. And I'm going to just kind of work my thread through my fabric here so it just stabilizes it for me a little bit. And when I come back out and I'm going to position myself to stitch, I'm going to actually come in 2 fabric threads below my opening, where I've removed the threads from. And you can see that better in this visual right here. This is my opening where I've withdrawn my threads, and you see I have 2 fabric threads left, and I've brought my needle up through here, and that's where I'm going to start. Okay, so there we are, and you can see right there. Next thing I'm going to do, in this opening here where I've removed threads, and I am going to pick up, let's say I'm going to pick up 4 fabric threads. I'm going to bundle these together. So I've inserted my needle. Notice my needle is pointing in the direction that I want to stitch or progress. I've got the thread under the tip of my needle, and I'm going to go ahead and tighten my thread, and it's going to bundle those little fabric threads that are left together. It's going to bundle them and give them a nice little waistline. And I'm going to keep tension on that thread, and then I'm going to finish my stitch by right in this opening, right next to where I have bundled, I'm going to bring my needle from the top down 2 fabric threads, and I'm going to come out, and then I will be positioned to start my next stitch. And I failed to mention that I'm working on the wrong side of my fabric. Okay, so again, I'm going to throw my thread in clockwise direction. I'm going to come in, I'm going to pick up 4 fabric threads, pull them tightly, and I'm going to come in and do what I call anchor. I call this second step here anchoring. So one more time, I'm going to bundle, which is grouping my 4 fabric threads, and I'm going to anchor. Anchoring is straight up and down. I'm not throwing my thread when I'm anchoring. Let me just show you a visual with the rest of these pictures. So first, we came up 2 fabric threads below the opening. I bundle my group. I have 3 threads in this group. You can bundle any number of threads. Your opening just has to be big enough that it does not collapse your fabric within that opening. Okay, so I'm bundling 3 fabric threads. Thread is below the tip of my needle. I'm going to pull it to create a waistline. And then my needle goes straight up and down right next to that bundled area. You've created an opening there, so it's easy to slide your needle in there. And I'm going to go straight up and down. And that is part of my anchor stitch. And that's what it looks like when I pull my anchor stitch. It actually pulls the thread. When I'm throwing my thread and putting the thread under the tip of my needle, I'm actually creating a cross in my thread. And so that cross pulls over to the side when we do the anchor part of the stitch. And then I get ready to do the next stitch. Okay. I want you to watch my thumb, my left thumb as I stitch, and how I control the tension of my thread as I'm working. So I'm going to start right away, hold my thread down with my thumb. I've got a little bit of tension on it. And I'm going to throw my thread counterclockwise, excuse me. If I was left-handed, I'd be throwing it counterclockwise. I'm pulling my bundle, and you notice I have not moved this thumb. I've still got tension on there. So now I can't do anything else but lift my thumb and tighten that the rest of the way. And you'll notice I'm putting my thumb right back down to control that tension. And then I'm going to come straight up and down with my needle and do my anchor stitch. And you'll notice that I still have not moved that thumb. I'm not going to move that left thumb until I have to. And I'm going to pull down, and then I have to move my thumb. Okay? Now I want to talk to you about hem stitching along the fold and show you just a little trick and what you need to do to prepare. The first thing you would do would be to remove the fabric threads where you would like your hem stitching to fall. And then I actually baste my hem in to hold it in place as I work. When I baste it in, I don't baste it right up along the edge here where I've removed my threads. I come down just a little bit so I've got room to work. And I also don't let my thread basting come right up close because I will catch it when I'm hem stitching. Okay, when you're hem stitching along the fold, there's just one little slight difference. When I start and I do my bundle, it's just like any other hem stitching that we've done. I'll go ahead and bundle my threads and pull them tightly to create the waistline. But then instead of doing my anchor stitch like I normally do, I'm just going to creep right here and just barely catch the fold of my hem. So when I catch the fold of my fabric for my hem, see, my needle does not show on the front of my work. Okay. And then I would just progress until I finished my hem. Okay. Now we have been working on the wrong side of the fabric, and I'm going to go ahead and turn that over and So the front looks different than the back. In the back, you see all the crossovers with the thread. In the front, for my hem stitching row, you see your bundles and your anchors, your straight up and down stitches. For your hem, you're just seeing your little bundles laying across on the edge of the withdrawn area. Okay, I'm going to show you a couple of examples on some garments. Okay, the first thing I wanted to show you is hem stitching. I've hem stitched along the fold right here on this little dress. Okay. And that's regular hem stitching. I did not come back on the other side of that hem and do a ladder hem stitching. Ladder hem stitching is I would come back on the other side and bundle the same group of threads. With a hem stitched bar, your work does not go from raw fabric edge to raw fabric edge. It's within the confines of your garment or of your fabric, let's say. So you have to finish the raw ends, otherwise your work would ravel out or your fabric would ravel. So you would start by hem stitching along the bottom, then you would finish the edge of your fabric where the threads would be clipped out of your way. And then you'd Thank you for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed learning a little more about hem stitching, and I hope you'll try it out.